Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Boomer Base. This is our first episode of the title Retro-Spective, where myself and Charles say hello.
Hello.
What a wonderful hello. Where we take our love for films, we apply it to films that we're very nostalgic about. So we look at films that, as a kid and a young adult, we enjoyed, we have very fond memories, and we're basically trying to see if the nostalgia glasses are impeding our thoughts and whether these films are actually good films and hold up today. And for today's first film, we are looking at the 1998 Godzilla movie. Take it away, Charles.
I mean, it's a very wet film, isn't it? I don't think there's a single instance. Actually, the bits when they're in, I don't know, Cambodia or South America, wherever it is, it's surprisingly not raining there. But the rest of the film, non-stop rain.
I know at one point they're literally like, I think it was something like Cambodia, to be fair. And like the next scene you see them, they're like, I think I googled it at the time. It was like 5,000 miles, but like it seemed like hardly any time had passed.
Yeah, I
Unless
mean,
they were in like trucks, so I don't know if they took a plane or anything. But
well, there was so much rain in the film that I think the studio was sort of asked like, or criticized that did you do this to hide the horrible visual effects? And the studio sort of clapped back as like no, it would have been a lot harder for us to do it with the rain. We could have saved ourselves a lot of time by doing it without. So it's not that. Fuck you.
I think for me, remembering it, like I don't think it like it looks a bit dated now as some of the like Baby Zillas at least, but from what I can remember, and even watching it now just on a DVD on like a 65-inch TV, like it wasn't that bad. Like I've honestly seen worse films that have been done later that don't hold up as well. Like for what it was, it's a as you quote wet film, but it's definitely just like its own popcorn flick type of thing. Like if you go in expecting much more than that, or if you're like a hardcore Godzilla fan, you'll probably be a bit disappointed. But as an overall, turn your brain off popcorn flick about a film where, as the community and fan base like to refer to him as Zilla, but Godzilla in name only. I mean, it's an okay film.
Well, I think that's the issue, and the issue that kind of this film had from its inception was that even Toho didn't like what they were doing with it. But the studio just was like, "Fuck you, we're doing what we want with it," and it was very obvious to the fans. If I remember rightly, they purposefully leaked concept art for Godzilla to like rat out any leakers, and I can't remember which company it was, but a company did end up publishing the leak, and they were banned from ever doing anything Godzilla related ever again. But fans saw the leak and were like, "We fucking hope this isn't what Godzilla's actually going to look like." And then I think the studio was like, "Oh no, it's not going to look like this," and then it did.
Well, no, definitely won't look like this. Because I was looking on the back of my DVD, and I'll try and see if we can put a picture in. But like on the back of the DVD, the Godzilla that you can see looks so much different. He's got like a purple glowing eye, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this? This looks rather bizarre." But like, I think my DVD that I have just must be a later one because it's like from the director of The Day After Tomorrow in 2012, and I was like, "Well, this film definitely didn't come out after 2012, so I think this is just like a re-released skin."
Yeah, I mean, I've got a poster for it, still, which is just the eye. Which is, I mean, I've got to admit, a lot of the sort of big marketing push for the film and the merchandising and things was very cool. There was some really, I mean, they struck a deal with Trendmasters, I think, not too long before the film came out. So there was a lot of Godzilla merchandise that was just getting pumped out at the time. I mean, they did. I've got some on my shelf. They did some Bendums of the classic Godzillas. I've got the normal one and the Mecha Godzilla. And then they did just sort of, action figures with like 4 or 5 points of articulation on them at like 6-inch scale. And then when the actual film came out, the amount of merchandise for that, you had like the Godzilla babies, but all in different colors. You had several versions of Godzilla himself. I remember when I was a kid, I had the massive arm puppet, and that was
I
awesome.
remember having like a big toy of him myself. Like I'm fairly sure it was. It might have even been from the animated series, but I do recall having like a big version of it. As it looked, it was very unique design, and like the scream that it did, I think is just used in many things, even up until now, you'll just hear that scream randomly from the Godzilla or the Zilla, whatever you want to refer to it as, from the film. And I mean, even though it's not really Godzilla randomly, because from having like a look at the sort of the Godzilla Wikipedias, not like literally Wikipedia, but like the I don't know even how to pronounce it, the Gopedia or whatever it's called. Like this 98 Godzilla seems to just be referred to as Zilla, as I think it appears in in a Godzilla TV show later on, or at least I think in the TV show that follows this film, I think actual Godzilla does appear and fight Zilla.
Yes. If I remember rightly, there was some sort of just weird copyright deal with Toho where they insisted that this be called Zilla, and I think in all things past 2003, 2004, when that series came out, it was to be referred to as Zilla. But because of the licensing agreement they had with Sony and TriStar, Sony and TriStar had it so that the film version is always referred to as Godzilla. And I think like Toho have warmed to it since and have been like, okay, yeah, the one in the film is Godzilla, but everything post the film is Zilla. It's very confusing. And I think a lot of it was just sour grapes between TriStar, Sony, and Toho, because Toho felt like, you know, their I guess cultural icon that is Godzilla got absolutely ruined before their eyes.
They haven't exactly put out the most amazing Godzilla films every time. Like there are some like shockingly bad Godzilla films that just really aren't like worth your time, other than to maybe laugh at them. Like there is some bad looking Godzilla films overall for what that did in '98. Like the Godzilla itself looks like really cool. Like it looks menacing. I mean, I think I jotted down somewhere. Yeah, 24 minutes in, Godzilla is trampling the city. Like that's 24 minutes into a 2.5.
I think the proper introduction you get to this version of Godzilla, when there's the fisherman or whatever he is, and it starts coming out it immediately gave me Lake Placid vibes.
Yeah, that was the 24 minutes in, because I was like, oh shit, we're seeing him already. I was like having flashbacks to the 2014 Godzilla, being like, oh, probably not going to see him till like an hour in or something.
It looks incredible. I've got we watched the DVD version, and yes, the visual effects, from what I understand, they weren't entirely completed, or they needed some touching up. I would like to go and watch the Blu-ray that is apparently much better, but the CG was the one thing that a few times I thought like this looks fake as fuck.
Yeah,
but I think for the most part he looks great. There's a lot of practical effects thrown in there. There's a few shots where you can clearly see that it's an animatronic or a puppet, and it looks great. It looks so good. I wish they did that more.
Tall or something stupid. It's massive from when I saw some behind the scenes.
Yeah, I wish they used it more. There was definitely some scenes, especially with the Godzilla babies, where I feel like it would have made more sense to use a puppet, and I don't know why they didn't. There's a few bits where they're sort of like coming through a doorway, and from one shot it'll be a puppet, and then the next shot, even though it's not really doing any different kind of movements, it's suddenly CG. I don't know if they had very unreliable animatronics or puppets, or they only had sort of the people that can man them for certain times of the day or certain shoots, but it seemed a bit odd. There are instances where it feels like they should have used it and they didn't.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. The Godzilla itself, up until the baby Zillas, to me, other than I think the odd scene underwater where it absolutely murks a submarine, it didn't look too bad, all things considered. It was when the baby Zillas got introduced that you really started to see like, oh, damn, this is some very dated CGI coming in here.
I think the thing that makes it look fake as fuck though is obviously the lighting and texture work isn't great, but that's, you know, it was 1998. But I think when he's taking his steps, it's a bit jittery as the foot sort of connects, if that makes any sense. It almost looks stop motion for a like fraction of a second as he's stepping down, which I'm, you know, again, 1998, maybe the animation just wasn't quite there yet, but it does look a little bit jarring when he's stepping sometimes.
Like that's like nearly 25 years ago, and like that's what we were getting, and it's quite like crazy, because one thing that like I found very cool was just that like sometimes the entire scene was like shaking. Like sometimes like all the cars in the background were going up and down.
Oh
But
god, yeah, this
what made me laugh was like there was that amount for when he wasn't there, but then there was next to no shaking when he was like walking through like right next to someone. I was like, where did all this shake go?
yeah, that's one of the things that's like amazing about this film, and just was sort of yeah, like the practical effects for all of the destruction that's going on around Godzilla was fantastic. It was so good. It's such a spectacle to see, and you know, as fake as Godzilla looks some of the time, you really felt like he was in the scene just because of the way he interacts with the practical effects going on around him. It looks great. But yes, you raise a very good point. I had so many instances where I was like, how is he sneaking around? You can hear the amount of times when he roars or like growls underground, and they're like, where is he? I guess he's not near here. Meanwhile, it's just like, it couldn't be anything else. Obviously, he's nearby.
Like, yeah, because I think I was watching and I was like, right, how is Godzilla fitting through these like pipes? Like, it's definitely much bigger than what I imagine like the sewers to be. And there was a scene about probably halfway through or so where a dude's walking through a tunnel and he's walking back being like, there's nothing down there. Then you see it's Godzilla's eye, and I was like, oh, holy fuck, yeah.
Oh my
Thank God
god,
he's
yeah,
not
because
actually going through the tunnel.
the guy who he says that to was looking at him, and Godzilla's eye was behind him.
Oh, that's why
How
we can't
did
trust
he
the
not?
eye.
That's why. How did he not say it? Maybe he was just too scared and didn't want to be like,
Yeah,
"Holy
to
fuck,
be
there's
fair, if I
Godzilla over
saw an
there."
eye like that, I'd have flipping lost my giblies for sure.
There was a few I feel like Looney Tunes holes in some of the buildings. I think there's one bit where the helicopters that are chasing him are like, "Phew, we lost him." And oh no, they like fire the guns through a hole in a building, but it's smack bang in the middle of the building. Like Godzilla just, I don't know, Wile E. Coyote jumped through it.
Yeah, because there was a bit where he was God. They were trying. It was the bit where they were trying to lure him for the fish at the park, and then like one of the dudes randomly got like too scared after he screamed, and like they opened fire. Then Godzilla started running. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, like 50 CGI planes like appeared out of the side of the skyscrapers and started shooting. And I was just like, where have you all been like sat to like suddenly come into action like this? Like Transformers, for people that don't love it, I'm a big fan of Transformers, and the special effects in that hold up so well. Like even at the end of that first film, there's only like a few planes and things going around skyscrapers, let alone like 50 odd that appear out of like nowhere in such tight quarters with Godzilla. Like I was just like, oh, that was maybe a bit too many for me.
Yeah. Also, I mean, sort of why we've seen Godzilla take a pounding from missiles and machine gun fire and things. Why did he just seemingly die like a bitch underwater?
Well,
Also,
he
Also,
came
how
back
did their
for
radar
cheap.
system thing? How did their radar system thing come up and just say like target eliminated? How does it know?
Yeah, I questioned that as well. I was like, no one's gone down to check at all. Where is it? Let me have a look. Like, they literally, it says target eliminated. They have no idea, and everyone's celebrating, being like, "Yeah, we've got it." And I'm like, no one's gone to check this at all. It's just
Yeah.
you could have hit like you know the earth, the rubble underneath the buildings, and it might have said target eliminated. Because
Also,
there's
one thing I find very funny is the sort of like classic 90s CRT wireframe like digital displays for like the radars and things. I love that this is a very new threat that has come to New York. The military have never heard of this. Well, I mean, this branch of the military, I guess, have like been monitoring it for a while, but still, it's relatively fresh. But their radar display has a custom wireframe Godzilla on it
yep, they
for
were
when they're
ready.
tracking him.
I think I read something that oh, what was his name? I'm actually terrible with flipping names. The I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Jean Reno person.
Jean Reno,
His character, all his crew were like all called.
very French.
Yeah, they were all the same first name randomly,
Yeah,
which made me laugh.
they're all Jean, but with different names.
Yeah, which made me. I thought.
Yeah, one of the notes that I have here is Jean Reno is very French in this film, and I need to try French roast now. Thanks, Jean Reno.
Because I think like when I started off the film, because I was just trying to watch it with fresh eyes, try and not remember too much about it. I was like seeing the beginning, and I was like, oh, is this like homage to like Godzilla, like we saw in the beginning of the 2014? And then I saw the iguana come up, and then like the humans tearing stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe this is going along the lines of like the Godzilla like protects the Earth, fuck the humans because it's always the humans' fault. But then no, it was just an iguana that got hit with tons of radiation and basically, quote, Godzilla was born randomly. Which I mean, it's kind of cool in its own way. It kind of explains where he comes from in like a not so like, oh, here's one bomb and then suddenly we've awoken a
It makes more sense. I think it was another contractual thing with Toho that every version of Godzilla must have his nuclear origin story. But they laid out a bunch of things that they have to have in a Godzilla film. Like I think it's his spines. He's only allowed to have 3 rows of spines, no more, no less. And yeah, he's supposed to have the nuclear origin and things. But I think like TriStar and Sony just completely ignored that. Or actually, I think like the director or producer on the film didn't get the list and just happened to get a few things right.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm honest.
One note I also have here is one of my notes is just Hank Azaria, but got a lot of Simpsons actors here.
I know.
We've got Hank Azaria, obviously. I did notice at one point he does the Mo voice. I think it's when he's shouting at Godzilla on top of the taxi. We've got Harry Shearer, which I think is the news anchor, who's also the news anchor in The Simpsons, and Nancy Cartwright, Bart Simpson himself, themself. She's in the film. Unless you know a lot about The Simpsons, you'd maybe struggle to recognize her because she is purely a voice actor. Well, I thought she was actually, apart from being in this apparently. But that was very cool.
One and only thing.
Yeah, I think it's the most Simpsons voice actors together in a film, which is an accolade they could put on the box, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, any accolade's an accolade, to be fair. Doesn't matter how bad it is. Just having a quick look at her IMDb page, the known for is literally Kim Possible as Rufus, the little naked mole rat, and then the Simpsons TV show, and then it's literally the Simpsons movie and Godzilla for the main 4 that appear. Who honestly knows? Like, I'm fairly sure she would have had to have been in some other things, but
looking at more of my notes. One is this is ironic. Tetopoulos, isn't that hard to say? I actually managed to say it. I thought I wasn't going to be able to then, and render my point moot. But it isn't that hard to say. Why is it a running joke that people can't say his name, to the point where they just refer to him as the Worm Man because they can't be bothered to try and pronounce his name properly? It's extra funny when you know that Tetopoulos is a reference to the guy who designed Godzilla. So that's almost just sticking a middle finger at Toho again.
I mean, they haven't been hitting the ground running with this film at all. Like, there was a lot to combat for doing a Western Godzilla film, and I mean, all things considered, it wasn't necessarily a box office flop, and they did say that there wasn't a second one due to the budgeting thing. But when it boils down to it, it literally, just have a quick look for the actual stats. Its budget was $130,000 or $130 million. Its opening weekend, it got 44 million, nothing too special, but its gross worldwide was 379, which, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't too bad for what's, when I think of a flop, I think of a film that hasn't made money, like I think the Buzz Lightyear film, I think didn't make money, or it only made like something like 20 million.
Yeah, that absolutely tanked. Yeah, this was a relative success. I think you've probably got to consider as well, like I said, the deal with Trendmasters. They had so much merchandise going out. I think just in toy sales, they must have made an absolute packet. Because I mean, it wasn't just toys based on this film; it was toys based on the entire Godzilla license that were coming out at the same time as the film. So they must have done really well on merchandising. I mean, they got some money out of me. young me had a lot of Godzilla toys.
To be fair, and then it even it spawned the 2-season 40 episode Godzilla the series that takes place after this with the same Nick Totopoulos but voiced by someone else with like a team.
Thank God. Matthew Broderick is awful in this.
I mean,
to be fair, actually, Matthew Broderick and the woman that plays Audrey, I hate them.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick was.
Audrey feels like a soap opera actress. Some of the line delivery in this is so awful, especially the sort of like romantic scenes between them. It's just,
No.
I haven't seen you since like 10 years
Where,
ago.
where's my
Yeah, you
notes? I made
haven't.
distinct notes about this. Yeah, it was 8 years since the two lovebirds met. And she then suddenly sees that he's got pictures of her still in his cabinet, and the first thing she does is look at a top secret thing and then steal it. After this man's been still pining over for you, and
I was shocked. I was so shocked. I think he would have maybe understood if she just explained it to him
yeah,
first. He seemed like quite a reasonable, and he clearly still liked her. I was really expecting as well when they first meet, because obviously he's buying the pregnancy tests. I was really expecting her to be like, "Oh, so you're with somebody else then?" And it never happened. I was really sad that they didn't do that. That would have actually been kind of
and he
funny.
only asked for one pregnancy test, but that checkout lady put 4 or 5 down on, and he just bought them all. No way did he when you ask for a pregnancy test, you don't expect someone to just give you 4 or 5. You expect for one pregnancy test of whatever I was about to say flavor of your choice, but
I was really expecting the woman to be a bit like, it's not a very good accurate representation of New York, to be honest.
oh, do you want a pregnancy test? Here's 5. Have it.
Hey, only what you see, buddy. I was expecting some real New York sass, but apparently everyone is just very placid and nice in this fairy tale version of New York.
I know.
Especially even just the Brooklyn denizens, just all the people. Like, it's they were getting a little bit perturbed, a little jostled at being quarantined. But you got one news broadcast that was just like, yes, people are lining up outside, not very happy. I'm picturing the picture of that protest where somebody's just got a sign that says, "I'm a little bit upset."
No, to be fair, I was happy we didn't see much more of that, because you don't. That's one thing that I find so. I'm gonna link it with Transformers again. Transformers, they get moaned at a lot for showing too much of the human side. Yet Godzilla 2014 that has a higher review rating on IMDb than most of the Transformers following the first one, but most of the film there isn't the main person you want to see. Now, when he does come, it is very good, but there's so much focus on the humans that doesn't really seem to get moaned at all. I think the biggest moan from the Godzilla 2014 is that there is a very distinct lack of Godzilla, which always upsets me, because it's just well, a lot of these people berated on Transformers for just having humans in, and I think Shia LaBeouf, to just throw it out there, was a phenomenal actor in that film. I don't think you could have put any, funky teenager in that role to play. I think that's literally how I would have acted, as a quirky, borderline ADHD type of teenager. If I was thrown into that, that's how I'd have been. I'd been screaming, I'd have been shouting, I'd have been flipping, losing my marbles, and that's what we got.
Yeah. I mean, I think as far as the sort of human side of thing in this, you could cut out one of the sort of side plots. I think it's very weird that it's the French CIA.
I know,
I think it's very odd, but that's fine. That I feel is necessary to the plot. I am happy to see Jean Reno in anything. I love that actor so much. So that one I feel can stay. That's fine. The whole thing with the army, the film doesn't work without it, so that needs to stay. Matthew Broderick's, whole thing of working with the army, that's fine. I think anything to do with, as much as I love Hank Azaria, everything to do with Audrey and Animal could be completely stripped out of the film. It barely impacts the plot, and it's just Hank Azaria is wasted here. She's a very wooden actress. They're sort of little subplot of just oh, we're gonna follow Nick and try and prove that he was right all along with the eggs, and the whole thing of just go out there, girl, and make your career. Very unnecessary.
Yeah, the only part that it works is literally the fact that they do the recording at the end and broadcast it to be look, you need to bomb this place because look, there is a bunch of fucking eggs, and that's the only thing. It was nice to see Audrey and Victor Animal, however you want to call him, their characters kind of mesh a bit, because Animal does come across as just a bit of a kind of a prick, but it's nice to see that he isn't
Yeah,
a whole
he seemed
trip.
like an arsehole when you're first introduced to him, and then he suddenly sort of becomes like quite a nice guy. It was
He's like, okay. Actually,
it's a bit odd.
to be fair, I'm talking about so much about Transformers, but Colonel Hicks, Mr. Witwicky, is in here, and I would like to think that this is a canonical timeline where this is what he does before he has Sam.
No, he's not. He's not Mr. Witwicky. He is Alan's dad in Small Soldiers. As soon as I saw him, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Alan's dad!" Yes, the Gorgonites are going to come save the day.
Like, anytime I've seen like Kevin Dunn in a film, I
He's
haven't.
always a
Yeah,
parent.
he's always a parent for me at least, and I always enjoy him in every role because I'm just like, you just kind of do it every time. Like, there's not a
Yeah.
time where I haven't seen you in something where I'm just like, you're doing your job well, and you're not exactly bad. Like, he doesn't really get much in this movie other than to be like an
I
idiot.
gotta admit, he feels odd as
He
a
does come in
military
at the end,
commander.
and like, the mayor's giving him some scruff at the end, and he's like, basically back off, pal. Like, we are gonna do this. I'm calling the big guns in. But like, the mayor seems to have so much control over what the army say. Like, you're just some, no offense, like you're just some chubby geese as a mayor. Like,
I find it really odd. Just not massively to do with the film, but just in general, I find it very odd that New York has a mayor. New York's like the size of the UK.
I know
Or am I over exaggerating? I feel like it is. Like it's a fucking
it's
massive
massive.
place, right? Like you can't just have one guy be a mayor of that. Like a mayor to me is like somebody that's just like in charge of a little town, does little ribbon cuttings and things, not run an entire metropolitan state. That's mental.
No, and then to have no combat experience to deal with either like extraterrestrial type of stuff slash like monsters. Like what if the mayor starts piping up, you basically say, "Back off, pal." Like, what the fuck do you know? Like, we're trying to deal with a giant ass lizard here that's literally. I quoted it. Literally, they just watched Godzilla do the worst damage since the '93 World Trade Center in minutes, and the first action that they decide to do is to lure him somewhere in the city, in which the man was just pondering about. Well,
Right. They also at some point they're like, we need to launch an evacuation. Has this ever been done in the history of New York? Evacuating everyone in such a short space of time? I don't know. And then they never mention it
I mean,
again.
they kind of
Like, how
almost do
did
it
they do
without
it?
literally any like like we didn't see the or too many of the very generic like beep beep traffic scenes with all the cars being too like there was only like a very minuscule of that, which was quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to see them struggling to escape or anything, but it was just sort of like, oh my god, this is such a massive task to undertake. How the hell are we possibly going to do it? And then just, oh, they did
Yeah, they
it.
did it. We didn't get the whole sort of like people are trying to get out. Everyone's barged up and they're like, no, you cannot leave. Even though you all need to get out. Scene that always happens in things like I'm picturing like I think it was Resident Evil 2 where it's just like people are trying to leave the city, but they're just sat at that sort of like, toll booth type of thing trying to get out. In which I'm just like, oh, just, I understand you have to like see people, but just kind of like let people through a bit quicker and then maybe do the tests on the other side rather than just like holding everything up, which normally leads to just so many more deaths.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was all in the name of pacing. Speaking of pacing, I do feel like the film was a little bit longer than it needed
Yes,
to be. I think the Godzilla babies bit went on for a little bit too long.
yes, I'd say because I think it had a runtime about 2 hours 11 minutes or so.
Yeah,
Around that.
I was ready for the film to be over about 10 minutes into the Godzilla baby bit. I know what they were trying to do. I think they were trying to have their raptors in the kitchen bit from Jurassic Park.
Mm.
But it what that's all you can compare it to. The raptors in the kitchen bit is so memorable and well done. Nothing can compare to that, and it's just that's all I could think about, and it wasn't that good.
I know. I kept picturing the sort of gremlin scene with the eggs and whatnot as well, and like the eggs themselves look really cool. Like
They looked very good. I
know,
think the Godzilla babies looked a little bit goofy.
yes, they look
To be
very
honest.
goofy, but like from Nick Totopoulos being like, oh, he's going to lay 12 eggs sometimes, it can lay up to, and then suddenly just to see just how many eggs were, and just to see the lack of panic from everyone, like all of those are going to hatch into things that could grow as big as the thing that's just murked the city.
That's a pretty good point as well. I did think like even if they do escape the subway station or whatever and start wreaking havoc on New York City streets, carpet bomb the place. They're small. Small arms fire could probably kill them. I don't see why it's that big of an issue. Also, the one that like in the sort of quasi post credit scene type thing, surely they'd send a team in to sweep the place.
I know
Before they confirm that they're all gone.
Like I remember watching that end scene and literally just being like gobsmacked to like, because I think like that scene in itself was like very very important back in the day. Like, I'm trying to think. It was like I remember seeing it and just sort of being like, holy baloney! Like that's actually like all I wanted was to watch another Godzilla movie or to see how it like continued because there was just one left. You know.
Yeah. Also the where the egg is, it's just like on a bloody podium. It's so prominent in that scene. It's very odd. There's like a hole in the ceiling as well. So I want to believe that as the Godzilla was running away from the helicopters to get snared up in the bridge, one just fell out.
I know,
It just
just
fell
existed.
out of whatever orifice Godzilla gives birth out of and just plummeted through that building.
Because I think it was, yeah, it was because at the begin, like when the baby Zillas were born, they started eating the fish, and it was the same as the iguana Godzilla Zilla thing. But the thing that was kind of scary to me is that they started eating the humans. The babies started to develop a taste for humans very quickly after being born, which
Oh yeah, I thought
that's
that was
quite
quite
scary.
cool.
In fact, like that these ones that are here now are like eating humans. Like if they escape, they'll just start going after humans, in which Godzilla wasn't necessarily going for humans when she was just stomping about the city looking for a
That
place to
was
nest.
that was one of the that was
Mm.
actually funny enough that was another one of the clauses in the sort of like contract with Godzilla that Godzilla is not allowed to be shown eating people. I guess they get away with it because it's not actually Godzilla herself.
Mm.
But that's yeah, they straight up eat a man in one of the scenes.
Yeah. And then suddenly when they're trying to escape, they shoot those like chandeliers, and none of the Godzilla babies manage to just like, lean a bit forward to like grab them as they just run through like an absolute horde of Godzilla babies. Like that annoyed me because I was just like, we've watched them catch up and like take out, trained professionals, yet, they can't just step up a little bit to just nom someone essentially. Like what what's happening here? What I surmised from this film is that pretty much Godzilla hates submarines.
Yes. I
Um,
mean, they are nuclear powered. So if anything, Godzilla should love them.
yeah, like the literally gumballs and little balls and things are super effective against Godzilla babies,
Yes.
and that high beams are super effective against Godzilla
The
herself.
balls on them for doing that. Oh my god. I thought when they mentioned the high beams, it was going to be turn them on, then drive, because
Not
make sure it works first. But just to drive straight into its mouth more or less, and then turn them on and hope that it works was
talking about
insane.
talking about the mouth, the super effective suspension cables that caught Godzilla. That was pretty cool to see them being used. But the mouth bit reminded me when Godzilla actually ate the car, but failed to like crush them in the car, and then they did that weird
Yeah,
sort of.
that really kind of baffled me. Like, you'd see the close up, and like the car isn't being squashed at all, and then you look at the wide shot, and he's like really chamming down on that car. Like, how is it still okay?
And woo, a little electric cable. Let me just jab that underneath your tooth skin, and then we kind of do some action-packed,
Mm.
like jump out of the mouth onto the bridge that's been half crushed.
Saying about the bridge, I massively appreciated the little reference to it came from the bit beneath the sea when Hank Azaria's character is trying to find film. I think in the record shop, in the tape shop.
Mm.
Yeah, seeing the little octopus from that on the TV screen was great for a very Harryhausen fan like me.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, the paleontologist lady played by Vicky Lewis, the Dr. Elsie Chapman. She was just such like a pain from the get-go. There was hardly any screen time with them together, and then as soon as Nick gets kicked off, she's just like, "Oh no, you know, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry
also
you've left." But
she also that leans into a point I have written in block capitals on my notes. Why does every woman want to fuck Nick?
I mean, he's the worm guy, out of everybody in the entire world to face this giant, borderline alien thing. The worm guy is what you need. The worm
Yeah,
man who was doing the
I mean,
Lord's work, to be fair. Like, he found that those little earthworms, 17%, If I'm 100
that is pretty
centimeters,
big.
and that's as big as I normally get, if I'm going to 117, that's a big, that's a nearly a whole school ruler's length, or half a school ruler, I guess. But
You're not
that's
wrong.
that's a
Well,
lot. That's a lot of height randomly. But I
yeah.
think that was only
Well,
used to explain about the iguana getting bigger. Really, enough radiation, you can make anything big.
well, I mean, it was. She's in the jeep with him, and then she's just like, "Hey, is there a Miss Totopoulos? No, ma'am. Oh, the bloody should be. Hmm." and then and then like Audrey, when she sees him on the telly, she's just like, oh, "My stars, that's my childhood
Yeah, she
sweetheart."
like catches him on the flipping screen out of like the corner of her eye, and she hasn't seen him in 4 years. Bear in mind, or something like I think it's 8 years. I think 8 years ago is
I think
when
it was 8 years.
8 years was when they met. 4 years ago is when they last saw each other. But like she hasn't seen him in a while, and she noticed at the corner of their eye, on the small TV screen, this like 2 second clip that has him in, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's Nick!" And then when he sees her, he's just like he's almost confused and not even sure if it is really her, and that's in person. And that was a bit like,
Yeah.
oh, how have you just like me with my terrible vision? I wouldn't have even saw him at all, but just to see like that 2 second bit and be like, oh my god, it's Nick! Like I'd have literally been like, who the fuck's Nick?
I mean, also the bit where she's like, "Oh my god, I need to find Nick," and she's on the phone in that phone box, like, "What do you mean he's on the line and now he's not? Where is he?" And he's just like walking behind her, like, wow, New York, the land of coincidences, I guess.
Yeah, well, definitely not a hard place to find you at all.
I've got a note here as well that says, it's a two parts here. The old man says Godzilla. How does he know what Godzilla is?
Yeah, I flipping wrote about this as well. This irritated me.
I think they mentioned that like Godzilla is some like Japanese god of the sea or something like that. But like, it's just as soon as the old man says Godzilla, Godzilla, the guy's just like, I think it's Jean Reno is like in shock, like he knows what that is.
Shit, here we go.
Like he should just be like, I do not know what this is.
No, and then they use the flipping like point of view of the camera.
Yes, I'm so glad I wasn't the only person that made that point. I've literally written down, man, it really annoys me when they show security footage from the film's shot perspective.
I know, like you even see a bit where they're looking at like Jean's character, and like there is no other person.
There is no cameraman there to have filmed this. Like it really just it's not that hard to just take another shot from a different angle. Or like from a security camera perspective or something like that. Don't use the exact shot that you're using in the film. That's so just jarring. I immediately notice it. I know I'm one of those pedantic, annoying people that looks for things like that, but like still, it's so obvious. It annoys the hell out of me.
I know. Why did like randomly like he wasn't talking and suddenly like, oh, let me bust out my lighter and turn it on for you. This will get you to.
Yeah, I didn't. I can't. I still do not understand that. I don't understand that at all. I think it was possibly a reference to another thing that was a stipulation, I believe, of the contract with Toho that they Godzilla must have his power breath, but they wanted to make it more realistic in this, and they didn't want him to just shoot straight up laser beams out of his mouth. So they made it so that he has like a power breath that when he's like breathing near flammable things, it ignites. That's why he seems to breathe fire sometimes. That was their way of making a more realistic laser breath, which I don't mind, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I'm like all things considered, like Godzilla itself was really cool. It was just the baby Godzillas that kind of let it down randomly.
So maybe that's why the lighter was like a sort of clue for
Maybe like some sort of like
the Japanese
homage
man.
around. Yeah, maybe it's some type of homage, like leaning into stupid things. That submarine that blew itself up was pretty hilarious, tracking something that couldn't really be tracked.
Yeah, that was really funny. Also, like the amount of times that they're like, "I've got a lock," and then it misses and blows up a very important building. Like the fucking Chrysler building gets blown up, and I was really glad actually that they blew it up, and then immediately was just like, "Oh my god, they just blew up the Chrysler building." One of my notes is literally "rip the Chrysler building." I think I was typing that as they were like, "Oh my god, the Chrysler building."
I know, and like randomly, like all things considered, like Godzilla really didn't do too much. It literally came to nest, and from nesting, I'm fairly sure Nick in the film says like, "Oh, it's because it's like an island with sea surrounding it." And I was sat there
when they
like,
said that, I was like, "Yes,
but
that is an island."
thing is the thing surrounding sea, pretty much on all four sides.
Yeah, when they mentioned that, I was like, "Yep, that's what an island is." Why New York though? could have been anywhere. They're saying like it's a good place to hide because of the buildings. I guess hide from what? It's
What
the
do we
dominant species.
Godzilla need
It
to hide
has
from
no natural predators.
that we know of?
Do not understand that at all. That was a very just dumb, hasty reason, I think, to explain why it came to New York.
Maybe it knew about all the other things that were going to appear in the Godzilla TV series that came afterwards and was just like, oh, you know what, I need to go hide and produce my babies to have, you know, a kick-ass army to fight all these horrible things. Because I'm fairly sure one of the episodes, I think it was like a part of like a 4-parter, I think it was called Leviathan, and it was to do with like some underwater geese, and like that was like it was one of the ones I can remember at least. But that was always a really cool thing because you know, man, getting up on the morning watching Fox Kids, the literal best TV station known to man.
Yes,
Like if you
and
didn't watch Fox
Jetix.
Kids, oh, Jetix was the shitty thing that came afterwards. Fox Kids.
Excuse me, Jetix had or it might have been Fox actually, but I'm pretty sure Jetix had Spider-Man the animated series, and that was all I watched growing up.
Spider-Man animated series, the '90s Amazing Spider-Man show that was on Fox Kids. You mean?
Damn it, it was on Fox, wasn't it?
It was on Fox Kids. I used to
God damn.
literally the Spider-Man. I used to watch, you know, Pokemon. You know, I'm fairly sure Jackie Chan Adventures was on there. You know, Yu-Gi-Oh was on there as well. You know, the Saturday morning, you know, American Block as it's called. You know, I used to just watch so many cartoons. I think there was like Werewolf on Campus. I used to watch, which was just a weird thing that was like some dude that was a werewolf.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
if you could guess that. Like, oh Christ.
we'll have to cover some of those in a video at some point.
Like, you know, well, Power Rangers was flipping on there. You know,
we are going to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie.
Yes, that is one of our films.
Yes, as well as Power Rangers Turbo the movie.
Oh,
I am.
God damn it.
I'm not going to get too into it. But I am beyond excited to finally air some concerns I had with scenes in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. But getting back to Godzilla, just looking at my notes, seeing if there's anything I haven't gone over yet.
I think I've gone through nearly all my like paper notes. I have got some like, you know, some Google Drive notes that I wrote. Like I put down that David Arnold's score was really nice and the camera work, you know, was really quite cool, to be fair.
I think the camera
And
work
it
was
definitely one of the
done
most-
quite well. I like that a lot of the human shots were done low to the ground, looking up. It gave a very good sense of scale for Godzilla. I feel like the Bryan Cranston, the recent one, the shots were very eye level.
They wouldn't feel like they felt very eye, or like normally you saw Godzilla from like a helicopter above.
Yeah,
you always
never
kind of
got that scale of that sense of being street level, looking up at Godzilla stepping over you, which this film does very well. If nothing else, if I remembered nothing else about this film from watching it when I was a kid, that is the thing that sticks in my mind. I've always maintained in my head from watching it when I was a kid that this film got the sense of scale done right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Godzilla apparently isn't as big as he is in the original films. Apparently, the original Godzilla is much bigger. And I think in the animated thing they did where normal Godzilla kills Zilla, they made him look tiny compared to normal Godzilla. But I don't know how true that is. I mean, I don't have a scale in front of me or anything. But I think considering how big it's supposed to be, it's you really get that sense of scale in this. It's done so well.
Yeah, I thought like, you know, Godzilla himself looked really cool. You know, the film itself, you know, has a fair amount of major problems. You know, with having things like some quite bad dialogue. You know, that's a lot of fish, and you know we're gonna need bigger guns. You know, but overall, as a popcorny flick, it wasn't as bad as it feels that people say about the film. Like I could, you know, yeah, it was kind of long, but I wasn't necessarily like bored.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you chop out. If you just cut Aldrich, I think you could, if you have sort of the bit like fairly early on where Hank runs outside and grabs his camera to try and get a shot of Godzilla to sort of establish Hank as that reporter character and have him be the one that maybe Nick finds at the recording studio to broadcast the message at the end or something like that. Just as a way to keep that sort of plot point in, and then just cut Audrey out completely. She does not need to be in the film. And
it does need to be like some love interest that happened ages ago to rekindle these characters and whatnot. Like
I just don't buy it.
It's been fine with Hank. Yeah.
I think if you cut her out of the film would easily be a 7 or 8 out of 10 to me. Those scenes, just anything with her in slows the film down, and I think maybe trim the Godzilla baby bit down a little bit. Other than that, it's a perfectly fine film. I think it's a good film that was let down by a studio that seemed to be going out of its way to piss off the the original owners of the IP and the fan base. And I think it was let down by a fan base that I think probably wasn't willing to accept anything different than what they know, which
Definitely
is understandable. This was quite a big change from the source material, but I think it's still good as a version of Godzilla.
totally agree. One of my notes here is, taken away from those unrealistic expectations and the fanboy outrage of '98, the film itself holds up well. It's certainly not disrespectful to the original films, bowing to the big fella's origins by opening on a Japanese ship, and it comes up with a credible explanation for why modern weapons don't work. Heat-seeking missiles aren't too good when you target a cold-blooded lizard. Those things make sense. Like the weird thing that I found with the humans in the film is that everyone in the army shit scared of Godzilla. Any human that's just a civilian, the cameraman, he sees this thing. The first thing he does is grab his camera and starts running. And literally,
That's
it was a scene that, like, a quote that made me laugh because, like, his partner was just like, "Get back here, you retard!" And I was just like, "Yes, come back. Why would you run after this person?" And on several occasions, Nick, literally, in one of the scenes, he gets literally like an erect dick's like distance between Godzilla and himself, and he's just sat there, just not batting an eye at all. Like, I was ready for some like How to Train Your Dragon sort of like pat on the head type of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I guess you could put that down to like, hey, it's New York chutzpah. but
I'm not
there was
I have feelings.
there was so many instances, sort of like, well, after Godzilla's leveled most of New York, where it like cuts to people in like a shop, like when he goes to buy the pregnancy tests. Go home, lady. Leave New York. What are you doing here?
Why are you still here running your shop where
Who's
like
going to be buying things from you? Everyone's
Yeah, like
supposed to have
people
been
like
evacuated. I think like they quarantine off sections of New York, which also doesn't make a lot of sense. When this thing can probably walk across the entirety of New York in this, like Manhattan Island, in the space of like half an hour. If that, I mean, I'm not in America. I'm not a cartologist or anything. I don't know how big New York actually is, but it doesn't seem like it would
I don't
take.
know how many steps Godzilla needs.
It doesn't feel like it would take many steps. I feel like his step count would be pretty low on his giant, comically oversized Fitbit.
Godzilla not getting those steps.
Actually, that reminded me of one other point that I forgot to write down on my notes is he's got a real case of T-Rex arms. He almost never uses them. The few scenes where he's like climbing out of something and you actually see him use his arms properly, great. You can absolutely tell that they probably modeled that on, because I think this was pre mocap. So it was probably hand animated, but they probably used a reference of somebody climbing up. Because he does have quite humanoid shoulders and arms. It's just very bizarre that most of the time, if you actually, I started looking at his arms when he wasn't using them, and they're very stiff.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like a xenomorph randomly, was what I kind of got. Like if you took a xenomorph and then just made it into like a reptile, that's almost the kind of like stature that you get randomly to me. Like it looked very like the alien sort of xenomorphs and how they walk.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly sure it wasn't someone in a suit though.
No, definitely not. I think that was possibly something they were trying to do, like make him look very reptilian and sort of dinosauric, I suppose, as a way to distance it from the very obvious man in a suit look that it had before.
I know, because that's something that like probably, I don't mind this Godzilla looking like it does. Because it's his own thing, it's its own closed off thing in the world of Godzilla. But like, I can understand the gripe with it. Like changing the look of such an iconic character to a lot of people that love Godzilla. Would just be like turning King Kong into like some weird looking, I don't know, anything that isn't King Kong randomly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't feel right to fans. And I can understand why they were upset, and that the worst redesign was kept a big secret until the film's release.
I think as well, sort of the studio did seem to antagonize the fans online as well. I think it did drive a wedge between the film and the fans. I'm guessing it was sort of any discussion about the film is free marketing, I guess. So let's just drive a lot of discourse about this film, and it didn't work as well as they'd hoped. I mean, it still got a good box office return, which was just maybe it was people going to go hate watch it, but the big
Hey, what
marketing push
I would-
obviously worked. I do
like,
remember reading that they purposefully didn't do test screenings because they knew that people weren't going to like the redesign. They obviously they pumped out trailer after trailer, but they really didn't want people to do test screenings, which didn't hurt its returns, but I feel maybe hurt the final product. There are a lot of things that a test audience may have been able to, like Audrey being Audrey just being a balloon with a smiley face drawn on it, having no personality, would have been caught by test audiences probably, but. We're
I think Matthew Broderick was very like square as well.
he of the films I have seen him in. I think this is probably the one. Actually, no, I would say Inspector Gadget is the one where he most seems like somebody that would commit vehicular homicide. But I could kind of see him doing it in The Taxi. He had bloodlust in his eyes when he was looking at Jean Reno. Like, move over. I want to drive. I know it's not a BMW, but I want to run somebody over.
Like for me, my favorite film with him in is probably War Games. Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. When I watched that, I don't know, I just didn't vibe with it as much as people rave about it. Like War Games for me is such an underrated.
I feel
film.
like you had to be there in the 80s to really enjoy Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was a film for the kids of the time. Speaking of time, we are fast approaching an hour.
I actually can't believe it's got to a flipping hour. What the hell? Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up, I guess. So thank you for everyone that has listened, and then for now we will be just containing this to just YouTube, but who knows in the future. But for the purpose of YouTube, if you could like the video, maybe drop a comment about what you thought about the film Godzilla if you remember it, or just even share some of your thoughts. That would be wonderful. We'll happily interact with you, and then just drop a subscribe if you want to listen to more things like this.